I'd like to give a huge thank you to our sponsors, Candela's Barking Beauties and Bee Graphics, as well as our gracious hosts here in Monessen, His Place Coffee Community, and more.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Candelor, owner of Candela's Barking Beauties, where our salon is your salon. We have 5 convenient locations, no appointment needed. All breeds welcome. Any size dog. We are open Tuesday through Saturday from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. We have 5 convenient locations: Elizabeth, White Oak, Finleyville, Monongahela, and Irwin. Love to have you visit us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today's guest is Brianne Mitchell. I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro on Brianne, and then we'll come back tomorrow and finish the interview because she's there. I don't know how she has enough energy to do all these things, but she does. So Brianne's a media strategist, a producer, a consultant, and she's the COO for Mitchell Legal Services and Mitchell Law Office. She also is an award-winning children's book author, the Della and Lila Book Series, based on her 2 daughters, and Della, who's 13, and Lila, who's 11. And she's also a philanthropist, and she's a very proud mom. But she also works in communications, in media. She's been doing that for over a decade and has built a wildly successful practice based in digital media and community service. Her top clients reflect the region's most philanthropic groups and grassroots organizations. She also has worked and partnered with some of the biggest names in industry: Disney, Sesame Street, Sesame Workshop, Netflix, Showtime, and WQED. She has also volunteered her time and professional services for charitable organizations that are near and dear to her heart. And how you find the time to do this, I have no idea. But there's a lot more here, and we'll get into that. I mean, things like Pittsburgh Magazine's 40 Under 40, which is really cool. Inspiring women in philanthropy. You can edit that, Nick. Pittsburgh Best of the Burg, and the Extraordinary Person Award. You've been featured on Fox, NBC, and CBS, and you've been interviewed in global productions. I'm in way over my head with you here. So without further ado, and we can get into some more of these things, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here and wonderful to see you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I love where we are. This is awesome.
A great place.
Yeah.
Yes, His Place in Monessen, who's hosting us here for the podcast and has been tremendous in welcoming us and accommodating in everything we needed to do.
I love it here. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for coming. So, a million and one things that we could talk about. And, honestly, an hour doesn't seem like anywhere near enough time. But what I'd like to really get a feel for, and this is how you and I actually first met, if you remember, I've been in the process of kind of trying to pull a book out of my head for a few years now. And we were introduced because you had written the first of the books. And we started to talk, and I was just completely and totally blown away by what you did and by the story behind it and how cool that was. So can you kind of give us a little bit of background on the Della and Lila books? And obviously those are your children, your beautiful daughters, and how that all started.
Sure. So, as you know, it's been quite a story and quite a journey, right?
Absolutely.
Like it always is.
Absolutely.
Which makes for a good story.
Right. You're exactly right.
So whenever we met, that was a few years ago, and the book series was well underway. But at the very beginning, the Della and Lila book series started when Della, who is now 13, was a little baby. She was 5 years old, and she was in kindergarten. It was a really cold, snowy March, Pennsylvania night, and she was making up some worksheets from kindergarten that she had missed through the week because she wasn't feeling well. And it was, worksheet 1 and worksheet 2, and then we were on worksheet 7 and 8 and 9, and she said, anything to take a break. Can I have a snack? Can I have a drink? Can I tell you a story?
Okay.
And I said, sure, I'd love to hear a story. I love a story. So that night, Della started to tell me this sweet little story about a mermaid who lived in the Monongahela River. And I loved it, right? I mean, I love this idea that this mythical, beautiful creature could live in our Monongahela, which is often so beautiful in the summer, and the opposite
Absolutely.
in March, right?
It has its moments, right.
So the story just started where this mermaid was lived in the river, and I asked Della a few questions like, well, what was she doing in the river, and why was she talking to you, and what did she need? And so the story just sort of developed, and I actually had my laptop there because I was trying to get some work done too, multitasking.
Right.
As a lot of parents do. And I just started to take down her story, to write down her story. And I thought, this is super cute. I'm going to put this in her baby book. So I had a few additional questions for her, and we sort of figured out what Marina was doing. Marina was the name of the mermaid that Della, gave her in the story. So had a few wrap-up questions, follow-up questions for Della, and she knew though, right? Like she knew exactly where.
She had it all figured out.
Right, like a 5-year-old would.
Right, exactly.
She knew in her story, and maybe she didn't know to vocalize it right at the time, but she had it all worked out in her head. So asking her these stories and listening to her answers was a very beautiful moment in itself.
Sure.
Just sort of
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Listen to the imagination of a child. Like, what's better than that? So we got all of the details of this magnificent Monongahela mermaid story. Like I said, I thought I would put it in her baby book. And then I thought, I'm going to type this story up completely, and I'm going to send it in our family Christmas cards. And then that happened, and I thought, I actually think this, this is pretty, maybe this deserves a little bit of a wider audience. This is kind of a cute story, and maybe some of her schoolmates would like to hear it, or maybe they would be inspired to write a little bit of a story if they knew that Della wrote a story. So let's support the kids in her class, or, some of her friends at her extracurriculars. So let's share the story with them. So I guess the very short version is one thing led to another. And the story that Della told me that night eventually turned into a book. We found our wonderful illustrator who's illustrated all of our stories for us, Sean Bowman, who was originally from Wales, but now lives in England. So, she did
Now, how did you find her in England? You're in Brownsville, right?
Yes.
How did you find her?
So how we do everything, the internet. So
Okay.
Right. So I went to the internet, and I actually looked at this website called Hire an Illustrator, and I went through all of the portfolios, and I tried to find an artist who sort of captured or encompassed the story that Della told, and I found Sean, and the rest is history. From there, she really knocked it out of the park with her illustrations. And if I would have known what the publishing and distribution world was like, I'm not so sure I would have set foot on this journey.
It's interesting.
That we're on.
It's interesting.
It really is. And I think what I told you all those years ago was that had I known what I was getting into, I never would have done it. I never would have been brave enough to do that. And I truly went in very blindly and thought, I can figure this out. I mean, I'm industrious. I can figure things out.
Right.
Had I known what, how difficult it was going to be, and it truly was difficult. And I made every mistake that you can make, and sometimes I made them more than once, and sometimes they were costly, and sometimes it was a learning experience. But I really just sort of picked my way through the problems and worked through the solutions.
Sometimes not knowing is a blessing.
It truly
was.
was.
If you did, had you done the research and really got into it, like you said, you probably would have talked yourself out of it.
Absolutely.
It would have stayed a cute little story in Della's baby book.
Yeah, and the Christmas card.
And the Christmas card.
Right, because it was, I learned so much. And it was very difficult. And like you said, it was very much a blessing that I didn't know, because I mean, it would have been a hard no. Like, I wouldn't have just talked myself out of it. I mean, it just would have been a hard no from the gate. Like, I am not doing
Well, and I get that because I mean I've written and talked myself out of this book 5 times, right? And I've written so much that I probably have 5 books, So getting through that, and I always hit that. And listen, I'm far from timid in anything, right? But when I get to that point, like, okay, I put this out there. I'm like spilling everything out, And is this something? How's it going to be? You start to ask those questions, and then you dig a little bit deeper, and then there's more questions and more questions. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that and jumping into that with both feet like you did. And again, making mistakes, being willing to make mistakes and learn. That's good stuff.
You have to be. I mean, right? Like life lesson number 1, you have to be willing to try. And sure. I was very hesitant. I would have been very hesitant to try if it were just for me, if the project wouldn't have been for my daughters, if my boss hadn't been 5 years old and very persistent.
Those are the best bosses, though.
They are, and they're very forgiving, and they still love you at the end of the day.
Right.
So if I hadn't done this for my children, specifically with the intent of delivering this project for them, I never would have done that. I never in a million years would have done that. And so
you did it
seeing
from love, that's why. I mean, and that's what that changes everything.
Right.
You didn't do it for profit. You didn't do it to make money. You did it from love. You did it from love for your children, and that's why it's successful.
And so when you do things from a place of love, whenever you're making decisions from a place of love, whenever you're making choices or you're acting on decisions from a place of love, that just makes it feels very natural.
Sure. And it's harder to surrender. It's harder to give up.
That's right.
Right.
That's right, because you want to see it through. You want to see it through for them. Because I can say, all through college, all through grad school, as a young professional, as a slightly older professional, that I'd said a million times, I want to write a book. I want to be an author. And I never gave myself permission to do that. And there was always an excuse, and there was always a reason. So although I may not have had the self-love just yet, I absolutely had, unconditional, of course, right? Like undying love for your children.
That's exactly right.
And then through that process, I gave myself permission to make some choices that were out of my comfort zone, to work on self-love, to make decisions based on how I felt, maybe not necessarily for myself, right, but for like what this would do for my family. And then that extension, which I'm sure we'll get into, was my family, my smaller community, the greater community, the community at large, and then that's how
that opened this up.
Yeah, it absolutely
that
did.
was what opened that door and let everything out. And I'm a big believer in it's nearly impossible to love anyone if you don't love yourself. Right? But sometimes you don't realize that, and you suppress that because, we're taught that the people around you, your family, your spouse, your children, that has to come first, but can you really do that justice if you don't love him here first, and that's a wonderful story. And you didn't stop though, even though you had adversity, and you had, how many books?
We have 3 books with a 4th completed and in production currently.
See, that's wonderful because, it wasn't always a great experience. It was difficult. You wouldn't even have done it if not for Della, but here now you are on book 4, right?
Yes.
And it's turned into a wonderful, and all the proceeds go to charity, am I right? So, and what charities do you support with the book?
So, all of them.
I get it. I understand.
All of them. Everyone we possibly can. But we actually started our own nonprofit, 501c3. It's called the River Fund.
Right. Okay.
And so not only are we able to utilize the proceeds from the book and merchandise sales to help our nonprofit and other nonprofits and community organizations. I mean, it doesn't have to be a nonprofit, but we started the River Fund, and now we can accept donations as well. So this year, and really with COVID, it's been hard to get out and do book signings and to raise money and to sort of hit the streets and work really hard and do the legwork in order to raise the money. So we had to be a little bit more creative with how we were raising money for our Christmas programs and Christmas drives and coat drives. And different organizations that we support throughout the year. I mean, we had to get pretty creative. We had to get, we had to figure things out. And when I got stuck, though, I will tell you, when I got stuck, I went back to the kids and I said, girls, what do I do? How do we do this? And they gave me some answers.
Is that right?
They did. And that was that. So we partnered with some local artists, for example, last year for the Christmas program, and we were able to have our local artist create these beautiful watercolor prints of 4 historic buildings in downtown Brownsville, 3 of which got torn down.
Oh, jeez.
Recently after that, which created the Way for Hope Park, but I digress. So
Well, and I'd love to have a conversation about Brownsville because I absolutely love Brownsville. I'm a big supporter, and I really think Brownsville will come back. You have to be patient, and it's difficult because you see all of what Brownsville has become, and if you can see what it can be, right? But I'm a big supporter of Brownsville, and actually would love to invest. We're thinking about doing all that with some things that we have, on the table right now. So hopefully we'll be able to. But there are some amazing buildings in Brownsville, not just Brownsville, but all over the valley. This building that we're in right now is an old fire station, and it's been repurposed. But there's so many opportunities here in the valley, and kind of tying to the community piece that it's so important to you and myself. But I think that it's so easy to get a building that has been neglected and let go and repurpose it. People kind of they step back a little bit because they think I'll never be able to afford that. I can't. But not only is it not as much money as people think it is, but there's programming out there specifically for this to help you to invest in a community and repurpose these beautiful structures that have been let go. I'm old, right? So I remember, I grew up in the valley in the 60s, right? I was a kid in the 60s and into the 70s, so before the bottom fell out. And I remember Charleroi and Donora and this city, Monessen and Brownsville, what they were. And, we may not be able to bring them back to what they were, but we can bring them back to something better, right? I really believe that.
I absolutely believe that with my whole heart. I mean, I fundamentally agree with you on all of the levels. And just as a little plug, if anybody is interested, if any of our listeners.
What's my mom?
Yeah. Okay.
She'll be interested. So yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely. So if any of our listeners are interested, you can certainly reach out, email me, message me on Facebook, hit me up on Twitter, and we're on TikTok. Of course.
Do you want to let everybody know your email?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Brianne, B as in boy, RIANNE, Bayer, BAYER @hotmail.com. There
you go.
It's been my email since 1998. So
good for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And listen, I tip my hat to you. I've been in that side of things, and I know how difficult it is when you're out there waving the flag. And but you and Mitch have really kind of stepped up, and I hate the cliche, but walk the talk. So, a lot of people can say, hey, we could do this, we could do that. But you guys are actually doing it down there, and that's a wonderful thing.
Well, that's what we can talk about now. We can talk about the oldest standing structures in Brownsville and how I came to be the proud owners of them.
So that's interesting. So tell me about that. So what, and let me ask you a question. Did you have to twist Mitch's arm to go along with this, or was he in from the beginning?
So the one thing I have to say about my husband is that he is such an enabler with me. So every idea is a great idea, right? Everything is, that's wonderful, and I would love to support that. So he very much enables every crazy idea that I come up with, and some of them work and some of them don't. But
that's a relationship, right? You do the same.
Regardless, he supports.
Well, and it was funny because I experienced that with you guys. If you remember the Veterans Day Parade a couple of years ago, and you were taking pictures, and I just said, wow, I'd really like to have some drone footage. And you said, well, Mitch is drone pilot. Mitch, get the drone. Go. And he just went, okay, and he went and did it.
Yeah.
You know, and he never even blinked. He just went and did it, and that's what I really had to spend some time with the girls, because Della and I had my granddaughter Chloe with me.
Yes.
And they're wonderful kids, but you guys just really, and this is a lesson for young couples, and there's got to be a give and take. Right. And I'm sure that, nothing's perfect, right? No relationship is perfect. But the fact that you guys are on the same page in investing in doing those things, that's huge. So tell me about the buildings. I know one I've been in, but so go ahead and tell me about the buildings.
Sure. So Mitch and I are the very proud owners of three, I guess four historic properties in Brownsville. And so one is the 121 Brownsville Avenue, which currently houses the amazing, beautiful, wonderful, delicious sandwich shop owned by...
That's the one I was in. It's amazing. And yeah, please, anybody that's out there listening that wants to venture down to Brownsville, go and have lunch and take a visit, because it's amazing.
Mike and Sabina Walters own the sandwich shop, and it is just absolutely outstanding. Sabina does a wonderful job there.
Absolutely.
And of course, upstairs is KG Tunney Photography, which is my friend and yours, Kelly Tunney's photography studio. So that is 121 Brownsville Avenue, which historically, it was built in 1921. And so 121 in 1920, that's how, my mnemonic device to remember that. But so it was the Plaza Bakery. So it was right across from the Plaza Theater, and it was located in Snowden Square. And so even the history of Snowden Square is just absolutely outstanding. It was Krepp's Bottom, and sort of like a marshy bog type area, and all the real estate in downtown Brownsville had currently been occupied. And Charles Snowden, an entrepreneur himself, right, was kind of like, hey guys, I'd like some space in Brownsville. And they were like, sorry, Mr. Snowden, we're all booked up.
No room at the end.
That's right. And he said, then I'll make my own. And so he barged in dirt and fill, and he created, out of this marsh, he built it up, Snowden Square, and then that is where the post office is, the library is, the plaza.
Right.
Really incredible. So when there isn't, that's right, another love, live, learn, pray, inspire, right? So when someone tells you no, right, you can certainly make your own way. You can certainly
exactly right.
Cart in the fill and create your own real estate.
And that's passion. That's somebody who knew what he wanted, and that's amazing. A lot of people would just, okay, I'll go down the river or up the river.
Right.
I'll just go to the next town.
Right.
But he wanted to be there, and that's a fascinating story. That's commitment.
It absolutely is. So that's where the sandwich shop is located, and then. Most recently, Mitch and I purchased a private home in Brownsville on Front Street, which was the original Black Horse Tavern, which is where the first meetings of the Whiskey Rebellion were held. In addition to acquiring the Black Horse Tavern as a private residence, we also purchased the Brashear House, which is where the famous astronomer John Brashear and his wife Phoebe lived for a period of time, and his family, Basil Brashear, had an inn. And there's also the location where the Marquis de Lafayette spoke to the people of Brownsville before moving on to Uniontown after crossing the Monongahela. So very historic properties, really excited to reinvest into our community. There's also attached to the Brashear House, these cute little storefronts that we're remodeling right now. And so it's a lot.
And of course, you had a lot of time on your hands, so you decided to turn the Black Horse Tavern into a business because you needed more to do.
So we needed more to do. So really, it came from a place of, now we own these things, and what are we going to do? Like, we have to make good on them, right?
Do something, right.
Let's open the doors.
Sure.
Let's figure out what to do. So because it was a private residence, we went through the zoning hearings, and we opened it up as a commercial space, and it is now zoned as a place of assembly.
Okay.
So, I am forever a hungry girl. I just want to, enjoy all the food in this lifetime.
Sure.
And so I thought, let's, and instead of just giving tours, right, like opening it up as a museum, we have to feed people. We have to feed these people. And I thought, let's have an evening or 10. But I also like to be entertained when I eat, right? So I'm thinking, like, what do I like to do? Where would I like to go? Well, I would like to go to this beautiful historic home and be served a 5-course fine dining experience. But I also, if I'm making this up for myself, right, I want to be entertained. What's more entertaining than local history and the Witch of the Monongahela and the Whiskey Rebellion? And, you sort of want to learn, but you also want to be entertained and you want to eat good food. And so that's what we did, which was, right, like, why not? Why not?
Why not? And listen, honestly, that's a great choice because one thing we have here in abundance is history.
Absolutely.
Right? We have that coming out of our ears. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. And so what do we do with this history? And how do we take this history that is so rich and so beautiful, but we have to get it to where people are consuming their information.
Sure.
So they're not coming to us. We're pushing it out to you, and we're coming to where you are, and we're saying, hey, we're here too, and we would love to introduce you to the Witch of the Monongahela, Maul Dairy, who has a beautiful and wonderful history in this area, very intriguing and very exciting, or the Whiskey Rebellion, which had its very meetings right here in this property where you're eating. So how do we convey that information? How do we get that out to new and exciting audiences while still, holding tight to our steadfast historians and heritage tourism type folks? Because we want to reach the broader audience, but we certainly don't want to forget, right, like our steadfast and true supporters too.
Right. Yes.
So we did a little bit of everything. Because I can't just do one thing. I had to do all of the things. And we worked with David Galiffa, who was our chef in residence. And
He's a tremendous chef.
Unbelievable.
He's just ridiculously good.
He's right. And I mean, just really talented. And David and I worked really well together, and it was very easy to work with him. In regard to curating the menu and fitting it into history and incorporating some of those really rustic components into our fall dinners that folks maybe who were visiting the Black Horse Tavern would have been tasting these types of flavors. Right. And then I had Delaney Harvey, who is a wonderful performer and actress, vocalist and dancer, perform the role of Maul Dairy, and the Witch of the Monongahela, and I had Della, who was the innkeeper, and we invited folks for this dinner, and our ticketed events sold out within minutes. Each time we had Kelly Tunney there doing photography. We had my husband Mitch as the valet and the chauffeur, and so you would park at either the parking lot, sort of where Old Front Street High School is, if you know where that is, right? Yes. So it's borough parking lot. Or you would park at the Novak Funeral Home parking lot, and then you would be given this beautiful tour on a golf cart of Front Street before you even get there. Yeah. So
that's very cool.
And you had to have a password to get in. It was all part of the experience because you were coming to these meetings. And the other component of all of this at the tavern is that it's a very spiritually active house.
Okay.
And it's a running joke, but it's true that I won't be there by myself.
Is that right?
I won't go by myself, yes. So I waste a lot of people's time asking them to meet me there just to sit in the living room while I do things or, wash dishes, or get the house ready for the events. I actually won't be there by myself. Not necessarily because I'm afraid. Or I'm fearful, but just because it's so active, which I don't know. I mean, I wasn't necessarily surprised, but whenever you experience things like that, certainly it takes you.
Sure. But you're in tune to that, right? That's part of who you are.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody is. When you say what you just said, it's spiritually active. You know, a lot of people will go, yeah, right, you know. But at the end of the day, there are those like yourself, and I'm like that you feel things, right? And I've walked into places, especially older homes and buildings, where you can feel something, maybe don't understand what it is or can't describe it, but it's a feeling that you have, you know, and so I get that, and that is really cool. That is really cool.
So my school of thought is that, you know, everything has a vibration and everything vibrates on a frequency.
Sure.
And
I
so
agree.
you have to think that energy, whether it's, you know, energy from the night before in the dinner, and you could just still feel that good feeling whenever you walk in, or energy from a different time and place,
Right.
whatever it is, I mean, it certainly leaves the mark. And even in this room that we're sitting in now, like, the vibe is so good, the energy is great.
Absolutely.
I love this space, you know, I love what we're talking about. And so vibrating on those frequencies, or even just letting yourself tune into some of that energy or some of those frequencies. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's beautiful, it's an experience, and if that's not your thing, totally cool. But if it is,
Absolutely.
you know.
And I don't think our energy dissipates once we're gone.
Right.
I really don't. And I think that, and particularly how you live your life, when you're here, right? If you live a certain way, if you put yourself out there, if you're vibrant and you really live with some gusto, I think that energy stays behind. I really do. I believe that.
Absolutely.
You know, it's like, you know, my father passed will be 5 years ago this May, and he was a very strong personality. Right? I mean, he would come in and dominate a room without trying to dominate a room. His presence, he had this presence. And I'll tell you a real quick story, because this is about you, but just to understand.
It's about us.
So
Yeah.
I've never been a jewelry person. I mean, I'll wear a watch if I get dressed up, right? Like today, I don't have a watch, but if I put on a suit, I just a natural thing, I put on a watch. But I never wore rings or anything like that. So the last conversation I had with my father before he passed, he just, you know, he was bedridden at that point in a hospice, and he came out with this little box, and he said, I want you to have this. I want you to keep this, and for Nathan, who's my first grandson, or oldest grandson. So, and here it was his college ring, okay? Nothing valuable. It's California State Teachers College from 1956, right? So it's a college ring. So I figured, okay, so I put it in my, I left the next day, which would have been Sunday. I flew home. And the next day, I had a meeting in Charleroi at the Borough Building. And for whatever reason, I got up and I said, I'm going to wear it. Because Nathan at the time was young. He's only 15 now. So I was going to keep it and put it aside for him later. But then I thought, well, I'm going to wear it. I'll take care of it. I'm going to wear it. And I get a call at about 9 o'clock that morning that he had passed. And I haven't taken this off since. I wear it every time I leave the house. It's the last thing I do as I put this ring on. And it means, you wouldn't believe how many comments I get on it. It's just a plain glass ring. That's all it is. Oh, that's such a beautiful ring. But the point I'm making is, his energy is here all the time. I feel it right now, talking about it, right? And not everybody would get that, you know, but I know you do. And that's a really important thing. And I think that's a really cool aspect of the tavern. Aside from, you can go and get a really good meal, right? From a top chef and have all that great experience, but you can also maybe experience something that you're not quite expecting, right?
100%. 100%. So we call it.
And by the way, I tried to get in a couple times and couldn't.
That's okay.
I wasn't on the A list, Nick. I didn't make the A list, buddy. You know, I know you're surprised by that, but you know, Nick's our executive producer and does all things technical. But
I love Nick's setup, though. By the way, like, can we talk about that for one second?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, he's amazing.
Nick is doing a fantastic job. I feel like, you know, really professional with all of these things over here.
Trust me, anything professional about this is because of Nick.
I love it. Thank you,
He's
Nick.
the best.
Thank you, Nick, for making us look good. But about the tavern, I mean, we call it an immersive experience, and I fully believe that that is exactly what you're getting. So the dinners sold out within minutes every time they tickets were not reserved. They sold out within minutes, and it was like everything, right? It was a learning experience. It was fun and exhausting, and I can't believe we pulled it off, because we thought, Mitch and I thought, we're not even going to open until next fall. So we ran that. I mean, I had general contractors, cleaners, roofers, organizers. I had like the health department there. I had the county there, right, because we had to go through all the things. I had architects there creating land maps to turn back into the county for the engineering, and I don't even know if I said landscape architects, and people fixing the pond, and people fixing the roof, and people, prepping the food and having things delivered, and like the sink broke upstairs the first night, so I mean, all the things. And I had people at the house working around the clock. We basically opened up a full service fine dining restaurant and a historical museum in 10 days.
That's amazing.
I
mean,
can't
totally
believe. I just can't believe it. I really can't believe it.
With all this other stuff going on.
Yes,
None of that stopped.
with real life happening.
Right.
Like real life.
Parents of 2 active girls.
Yeah.
Right.
Full-time jobs.
And WQED, right? You're in addition to the legal service law to Mitch's in your office, you're doing that COO. That's a big deal, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
And you're also doing this WQED.
I work with QED. Yeah.
And you do social media there?
Yeah. So yes and no. So so first and foremost, WQED, I think for many people, many people, is just all-encompassing in regard to like childhood and,
absolutely.
and things that they love and remember, and it's very nostalgic. But first and foremost, WQED is it's a educational media station, right? So they're there for kids to learn. And so I worked in the education department. I was a communications and social media associate, and then COVID happened and we all transitioned and worked from home. And then I transitioned one step further with WQED. So I'm now on the Community Action Board and the Education Board, and I feel like I can really serve.
Right. Well, congratulations. That's wonderful.
Thank you. Their mission, right, as a board member, but also to help our community. And so a couple different things have happened since then, and really I take no credit, but I'm just happy to be part of it. So WQED Education Department has partnered with Brownsville Public Library, and they are now an Inquire Within library, and an Inquire Within is this just absolutely amazing program that the education department runs with local libraries. And then also on Be My Neighbor Day, which was this past November, which seems like I hesitate when I say that because it seems like yesterday, but meanwhile it was 4 months ago or 5 months ago.
You're exactly right.
Whatever it was. So at the sandwich shop, we had a station, and so all around southwestern Pennsylvania, there were places where you could go and be a good neighbor, and it was cardigan day, and you wear your sweater, and all of these activities.
And that's everybody's first connection to QED.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes, of
even
course.
back when I was a kid, and my children and my grandchildren, it's just, how do you even describe that? It's amazing. That was the transformative television show, program, whatever you want to call it, I think, in the history of American television.
Absolutely.
I really do. I mean, it raised how many generations of Americans with that program learned how to be not only good neighbors, but good people.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
And the lessons that Mr. Rogers touched on in each episode are so incredibly important in 2022.
Absolutely.
Right? Like as important as they were in 1986.
Absolutely.
And so, who else can you lean on or look toward and say,
exactly right.
In 1986 and 2022, you're still as relevant
in 1966.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the amazing thing. It never gets old.
No.
You know, you could watch one of those episodes from the 60s, from the 70s, from the 80s, the 90s, and so on and so forth, and watch it today, okay? And not only will the message resonate, but you'll find something else in there that you didn't see before. You know, we were blessed. It was a wonderful man. I mean, we were all blessed to have him, and we had him because of WQED.
Absolutely, and the work that WQED does now within the community and for the community is truly, absolutely outstanding, and especially the group in the education department. Of course, they're near and dear to my heart.
Sure.
But they are just absolutely amazing, and I can't say enough good things about them. I mean, if we sat here and talked for 3 hours, I wouldn't even be able to give you the tip of the iceberg in regard to what they're doing in community. So I'm so proud to be able to support them on the education committee and through the community action board. I am a #1 fan. I'm the president of their fan club.
No, I'm right behind you. I'm number 2 because
Yeah.
I think it's an amazing resource. It's a blessing for all of us here in Pittsburgh. You know, and it's one of the original public television stations in the country, right? I mean, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
You know, so it's again history. We have this history.
We have so much history, and we
Right.
need to introduce it to our newer audiences. And I don't
We
even
do.
want to say younger audiences, right? Because I don't.
You're right.
It's not an age.
Oh, no,
Right?
you're exactly
It's a
right.
new audience.
Sure.
It's people coming. It's homecomers who
Yeah,
are
exactly.
You know, coming
Exactly.
back to this area because of different opportunities, or they want to help in the community. It's folks who are maybe even just opening their eyes to who've lived here their entire lives and seeing what a resource our local history is, or what a beautiful place that we live
And not
in.
everybody's in tune with that. You know, I mean, there are people you get into life, right? Like you said,
Yes.
life happens.
So much
okay?
life.
And you miss things, and you'll hear something somewhere like, you know, the Ferris wheel was invented in Pittsburgh. Wow, I didn't know that. You know, that's how cool was that, right?
Yes.
You know, I've ridden Ferris wheels my whole life. Who knew? You know, so that type of that person, I think, is as important as the young people. You know, because there's so much here. If you missed any of it, you missed a lot.
Right. So Mitch and I were just at the Heinz History Center so I am that person.
Oh, I love
am
the
that
Heinz
person.
History Center.
I didn't know that the Ferris wheel was invented in Pittsburgh, and I just found that out on
And
Monday.
The banana split. How cool is that?
It's the best.
Like, I mean, come on. This is
Right.
like 2 of the coolest things ever, you know? So, I mean, yeah, but it's totally amazing. And even when you go back to pre-Revolutionary War, you know, this part of the world was here before this was actually a country, you know, and there's the city of Uniontown, for example, one of the most historic communities in the entire country.
Absolutely.
You know, Brownsville. I mean, they were here, and there were people living here and thriving and building lives before the United States was even a thought. right?
Absolutely.
So it's amazing.
Yeah, so during our ghost tours at the tavern, I always say, I know this isn't a history tour, you know, but I feel compelled to tell you all of these things. And so we talk about Route 40. We talk about the commons, the common area right across the street from the tavern. We talk about Chief Nemacolin, you know,
Right.
in the 1600s in Brownsville, and the Native American mounds, and so I mean just literally all of the things.
Sure.
So much history, just so much beautiful information.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's and I'm, you know, and I feel responsible as a steward of these historical properties.
I agree.
Yeah, I
And
feel
I was raised by a
responsible.
history teacher.
Right.
So, you know, my dad taught history, and that was his thing. And, you know, we had a lot of conversations about that. And I feel the same way. I to the point where I annoy people with it. So it's like, you know, did you know? Well, okay. Yes, we did. Leave us alone.
Right.
You know, it's like, stop. But it's so cool. You know, it really is. I had the grandkids on one of those ducky tours in Pittsburgh, right? So, you know, the guys driving that boat, which scared the heck out of me because I really wasn't sure we were going to make it back, but that's another story. So, and we're going up and we're coming onto the Smithfield Bridge, okay? And he said, not many of you would know this, but something and I'll paraphrase, that the Smithfield Street Bridge was built lower than the normal bridge of the time because they didn't want boats to be able to get upriver to Monongahela because Monongahela was this thriving new little settlement, right? So that's why this came from the tour guide on the Ducky boat, so don't hold me to that. But it was really cool because I'm like, and my Terry Lynn's from Monongahela, right? So where I'm like, hey, that was really cool. But those types of moments, those types of things, and especially when you're out traveling somewhere else around the country and you hear a reference to the valley, it's a really cool thing.
But no matter where you are traveling, it's, I don't know if it's been your experience, but it's certainly been mine. We often find ourselves around folks who are from this area.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's
Absolutely.
the energy fields or if you sort of gravitate
You can feel
together.
it. Right.
Mitch and I were at Acadia National Park in Maine, and we were lost because neither of us are very good with maps, and just like in the middle of this park. And I said, I think the shuttle loop comes right here. And I said, there's people down there waiting. Let's go ask them. And so we walked down to the shuttle loop, and it turns out those folks were from Uniontown.
Yeah,
and,
you go.
Mitch
Right.
knew who they were. And so,
Sure.
it's just really, it's a really unique place.
Mm-hmm.
The Mon Valley, southwestern Pennsylvania, it's a unique place. And
Absolutely.
you can find your people.
I travel a lot for work, and I don't know that I've ever been in a city where I haven't either met somebody from here or somebody that knows somebody from here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we travel. We're all over the place. So,
We're everywhere.
yes, we are. Yes, we are. So, let's talk a little bit here about Kelly and because I first saw you guys doing the fish fry thing that you did, right?
Fish Tour Fridays.
Fish Tour Fridays, which was really cool. Please tell me you're going to keep doing that because that is like the coolest thing,
Yes. So hyper-local journalism, which is what we're doing now, but hyper-local journalism is one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I have to give Mitch credit because not too many people know this unless you followed us on YouTube 12 years ago. So before social media, was even a thing.
Yeah.
So I was actually, I was teaching, I was a communications teacher at West Liberty University. And you had to have, back then, you actually had to have a student email address at that point to sign up for Facebook. So it was like at that point, the Facebook.
Okay. Yeah,
when
the
it was,
Facebook.
When it was
the Facebook,
yes.
right.
So you had to have a student email address, which I had, my name at westliberty.edu. So I was able to sign up for Facebook and just utilizing it to see what it was and what it,
Right.
what it meant. And then Twitter happened as well, sort of right around the same time. And for Christmas that year, Mitch bought me a book on how to use Twitter. So, just kind of, dating and aging the story, but he bought me a book on how to use Twitter, and he said, I really think this is something that you should get into as a communications communications teacher, because this is probably something really important, and you need to understand it on a fundamental level. So one of my associates at the time, her name was Jasmine, we just sort of took like a little bit of a deeper dive into social media and sort of studied it like on an academic level, and I actually, that following semester, started a course called Hyperlocal Journalism, which was inspired by our very first run at Fish Tour Fridays with my husband. So we had this.
I didn't realize that's how it started.
Oh, it started with Mitch. Yeah, it was Mitch's idea, which he says I never say, but I'm saying it right now.
That's awesome.
Zach, you were witness to that, okay? Mitch came up with Fish Tour Fridays. He came up with the name, and we would go to, and I'm always afraid that, people will find those videos or dig up those videos.
Yeah.
If they're looking, I'm not really afraid. It's just something that we can all laugh at it, at this
They
point.
have to be able to do that. Right?
Absolutely. And it's before like HD cameras and all of these things. And it was when Apple first came out with iMovie. That's, what we were using to edit. So anyway, Mitch came up with the idea of Fish Tour Fridays, and a few years later, Kelly and I were working on a couple things, and I said, "Hey, are you like, do you want to like do this?" To Kelly, and of course Kelly, who's wonderful and fun and
Very talented.
insanely
Yes.
talented,
Yes,
right? Like Kelly Tunney
absolutely.
is insanely talented.
Yes.
And he was just kind of like, yeah, that sounds fun. I think I'd be into that. What does this look like for you? And I'm like, I don't really know. What does it look like for you? And he's kind of like, I don't know. Let's just see what happens. So we went, our very first stop was the Route 40 Classic Diner. And we really didn't have any idea of a production aspect. We were just trying it out. We wanted to see what happened. And our friend Charlie and Preach, who own and run and own the diner, in that order. But they were gracious enough to let us come up and sort of film the first episode and get our bearings in regard
sure.
to what this looks like and what it is. And really, Local Productions was just about local good news and
Sure.
doing some fun things. And Brownsville wasn't being covered in the news at all at the time. So we were like, let's do this for the community. There's some really fun stories to tell, really beautiful stories to tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where it all started. That's where it all stemmed from. And, I was just so lucky to partner up with Kelly,
Right.
the incomparable Kelly Tunney. And he was on board, and one thing led to it. And, of course, how it always goes. And we we started on Ash Wednesday, and every Friday after that, we just kind of went to a different spot. And then we went to St. Nick's Church for the pierogi video.
I was just going to bring that up if you didn't, because now that's an all-time classic.
Thank
That
you.
one will go down in cinematic history.
Thank you. It got millions and millions of views of
yeah, I believe.
social media, so that was exciting for the ladies.
They were amazing.
They were the absolute best.
And that was just, there was nothing, no script or anything. They were just
Nothing.
being themselves.
Yeah.
And
yes.
it's like,
But it was hard to get in there. Like, they weren't going to let us come.
Is that right?
Yes, I had to have.
they weren't feeling it.
I was hung up on.
Really?
When I called the first time and I said, hi, my name is Brianne Mitchell, Local Productions, da, da, da. They said, we don't want you to come here. And they hung up.
That's awesome.
I mean, like, landline.
Bam.
Right, like, slam down the phone. And I said, Kelly, I think she just hung up on me. And he said, oh my gosh, they don't want us to come. And I said, I'm going to call back. So I called back and I said, I'm sorry, I think you misunderstood. I just want to tell, I want you to. And she said, I understood perfectly fine, and we don't want you here.
Really?
And then, yeah, right? Because they didn't know.
That just made you more determined to go.
Well, I thought, now surely we have to tell the story.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, first of all, everyone knows to buy their pierogies,
Sure.
right? From these pierogi ladies, and they have been doing this. Now, I will tell you, I went there when I was in kindergarten with my baba. After half-day kindergarten, she would take me there while she made pierogies as well. So it was a very special place to me. I wanted to tell the
Sure,
story. I felt very
absolutely.
in tune to it. It was sort of like, emotionally driven, that I wanted to tell the story, and of the pierogi making at St. Nicholas Church in Brownsville. So my old neighbor, Jean Mangini, was making pierogies at the time, and still is, and I think she's in charge of it now. So,
Okay,
so she's
okay.
like the
Wow.
queen
Yeah,
pierogi
that's
maker.
big.
Yeah, it's
That's
it's a big deal.
When you're
Absolutely.
the queen of the pierogi ladies.
Exactly. So I had to call Jean and say, Jean, will you please speak on my behalf?
Can you get me in?
Yes. And she said, well, I can't guarantee it, but I will
I
talk.
can't guarantee it.
I will talk
That's
to
amazing.
my group. And I said, please
Yeah.
call me back. So they had a meeting to determine if it was okay if Kelly and I went into film. So I was very nervous when I went. And I wore a hairnet and a babushka and an apron because I thought,
That's what pierogi ladies do.
it's appropriate.
Yeah, it's the uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the uniform.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I think that maybe made them feel a little bit more comfortable. And then we just started chatting, and Kelly was filming, and my friend Jacob was there, who was making pierogies with me, and all the pierogi making group was like, Jacob, your pierogies are so good, Brie, yours are so good. Yeah, like maybe you need to come back and take lessons. Mitch was there, and Father Bob was there, but we were very nervous. We were very nervous going in there, but it was funny, it was fun, it was natural, it was a story that needed to be told, but we also wanted to preserve this moment also, right, for the church,
story,
for friends, family,
absolutely.
History,
because that's going away.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's sad, but it's going away. And being raised Catholic myself, and when I look at the local parishes and how things have changed over the years, and those types of things are going away.
Absolutely. So I feel like handmade pierogi making is a dying art, and it really just sort of wanted to preserve that local tradition. So Callie and I continued on with our Fish Tour Fridays, and then COVID happened the following year, and we weren't able to go. So hopefully we'll be able to pick it back up and
Good.
See what the season. See where
I
they
looked forward
take
to
us.
that. Yeah, so I know where to go get because every Friday I have to get my fish sandwich.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Try to stay local and support local, and so I was depending on you and Kelly, so I knew where to go.
Absolutely, but these are the stories. These are the hyper local stories.
Right.
That all sort of tie back into supporting the community and wanting to support local traditions and these sort of unsung heroes of community tradition and history, and even just the building itself, St. Nick's Church itself. So in this historic town on historic Route 40 with the historic pierogi, what's not to love?
It makes perfect sense
about this. So we just local productions, just. Right.
So how has it gotten? Now you've come a long way from that, you and Kelly, with local productions. So you're doing digital media things and branding, and do you have a lot of a local client base? Because and one of the things that I encountered, like especially when I was president of the chamber.
Yes, but we'd always like more. We'd always like more clients. Thank you.
Well, we'll talk, because the thing that we do is, people tend to classify local entrepreneurs, business people as, they can't afford that type of really high-end marketing, branding, media presence, right? But I know it's affordable, okay? And I think that's a great message, not only for the audience as a whole, but for those entrepreneurs out there that are really not thinking they can afford to expand their social media presence, to do a really cool high-end website. The value of a really good professional photograph of you, right? Rather than just nothing wrong with an iPhone photo, but just, instead of your profile photo if you have a business page on Facebook, to have a professional photo rather than just one that you're in. Mine normally were, like, my granddaughter would take a picture of me and I put it on, right? But once I decided to go and ramp things up a little bit, I knew I had to have a professional photo. So I did that, right? And it wasn't something that was financially painful or anything like that. So I think that what you guys are doing is really incredibly important to the local business community as a whole. I mean, I would love to see, and I'm going to spread the word and with everybody that I know, because it's so important, especially if you want to listen. The global economy is right out there, right? It's not far away from here. It's on Main Street, right? It's on McCain Avenue. It's here, and I don't care if you are Walmart or if you are just a mom and pop, with a little one-person operation. You're competing in the global economy.
Oh, you absolutely are.
You need to get yourself in every advantage that you possibly can.
So the we call it global local, which is kind of hard to say.
That's great. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Global local. You could say that 5 times fast. But
that's great.
But it's absolutely what it is, because with the way the world works and we go online for everything, right? Like you can still be a competitor in your marketplace.
Sure.
In your hometown without leaving with the way the digital media marketing, storytelling, and commerce works right now.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You can really have a very nice, serious, professional digital footprint, and still be working on McCain Avenue in Charleroi. You know,
That's
it's
exactly
global,
right.
local. I mean, it's very important. It's a very important concept, and it's something that I feel very strongly about in order to sort of move folks forward, help their businesses, move their
Sure.
businesses forward, things like that. I mean, it's very important, and I would love to help people. And I oftentimes reference my time as an instructor, as a teacher, where I was able to study social media marketing and communications and teach it on an
Right.
academic level.
Right.
And so I understand it. I think maybe, I don't know, digital natives, you know, folks talk about digital natives.
Right.
I don't even necessarily know if I'm a digital native. I like to think I am. We'll just say
Right.
I am. We'll just say
Absolutely.
I am.
There's
Right.
nothing wrong with that. That's
Right.
and I think you should put that on your business cards. You know,
Digital
like you said,
natives.
at the end of everything else.
Yeah.
You know, you digital native. Yeah.
But it's really important to recognize that we locally, like our group of our community of
Sure.
entrepreneurs, we're able to compete. We're able to compete in a global
Absolutely.
market, and
Absolutely.
we're just as relevant as anyone else. So if you think you're not, you're wrong, because you
Absolutely.
are. Yeah.
And we're really, I mean, let's be honest. We're really kind of the forgotten part of 4 counties.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, it's like, you know, again, when I was a kid, Washington County happened right here on the river, right? Not over on 79, not in South Point. No, it happened right here. Washington County was right here. Well, that's obviously has changed. It's changed dramatically, but we're still here. But we've kind of got this mentality where we can't compete, we can't keep up, you know, because we've been left behind. Well, to a certain extent we have, but we haven't, because we have opportunities with businesses like yours, for you and Kelly, and you know, and that's kind of what drove me to do this, is to tell those stories like that, right? Because there are so many cool stories in the Mon Valley and in the region. And you talk about the 4-county region in southwestern PA. There's a lot of stories here, and there's almost as many people even include Beaver County, right? The county surrounding Allegheny. There's almost as many people here as there are in Allegheny County, right? So there's a huge audience here, and there are so many people doing so many cool things, and I want to tell their stories, okay? I want them to tell their stories. So I would love to be able to use that as kind of a case study as to how we can take something that is global local, right? You know, I have a lot of national type friends, right, that loved this idea and said, hey, I want to be on the show, right? And when I sat and thought about it, and me sitting here talking to a face on that TV screen, nah, I don't really want to do that, right? Nothing against them, they're wonderful people, but I want to tell our stories first, right?
Absolutely. And that's, again, bringing this conversation full circle. It really all comes back to the community. And, you know, your focus on the community, my focus on the community, Kelly's focus on the community. I mean, and truly everyone that we work with and everyone who's
Right.
sort of, you know, in this together.
Sure.
We very much are a community, and local productions is very community driven, and the Della and Lila Book Series is very community driven, where we
Right.
turn around and donate all of our proceeds back to nonprofits that help children and families within the same community. And the Black
Exactly.
Horse Tavern, just this
Exactly.
Christmas, we donated all of our proceeds to our Christmas program because we needed to get creative and figure out what we're going to do
Sure.
to help our neighbors this very hard holiday season,
Yes.
where things cost a lot more, the availability maybe isn't there, and how are we going to make Christmas okay for these families? Like,
Right.
we're gonna have an immersive dinner experience, and we're gonna donate the
Exactly.
proceeds. So
Exactly.
you know, just
It's just like his place. I mean,
Yes.
everything that they do here is invested back into the community.
absolutely. And I hope that what Mitch and I are doing, and what Kelly and I are doing, and what the girls and I are doing are showing people that if they can do it, like if we can do it, then they can do it too.
Sure.
So I hope
Sure.
people can say, or, you know, look at Della's story. I hope young children can look at Della's story and say, well, I know Della. I go to school with
Right.
Della. She's an author. I can be an author too. And we
Right.
really want to inspire people to tell their own stories. And our vehicle to help our community or to support our community was a children's book and a historic building and like a dinner
Sure.
and some video. but other people's vehicles may be different.
That's exactly right. And it comes back to, we all have individual journeys, but we're all walking together.
Yes.
Right? We're walking forward together, and everybody's entrepreneurial journey doesn't look the same. And there's so many, but it's about being open to the opportunities, right? Honestly, you were just doing some worksheets
Just
with
doing
Della,
some
and all of a
stuff.
sudden, bam, Mom, can I tell you a story? And that turned into a series of books and an opportunity not only to put to your creative side, because like you said something to me last night about being a writer and an author. That was really cool.
Well,
I get that.
Well, yes, and what I said, and I mean it, and I say this a lot, but I say it from the heart. So, we were invited to England and Wales of course, with Sean, because of Sean, to go on a European book tour and to do book signings in Europe, which was amazing. And so we were literally, it was such a dream moment for me,
Sure.
right? And so we were flying over the Atlantic, and the sun was, sort of going down in the, and it was really bright in my aisle, in my row. And I was just thinking, like, I cannot believe this is happening. Like, this is such a dream come true. I'm flying to Europe for a European book tour with my family,
Sure.
who wrote this book. Like I said, I was I was the worker bee. They were the what drove it, and
They
the inspiration.
created it.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
the inspiration behind everything. So, what I said to you last night is, I always thought of myself as a writer, but never an author, and I always thought of myself as creative, but not an artist.
Right.
But taking these steps first through, from a place of love for my children, and then from a place of love for my community, and then
Right.
from a place of love for my spouse and my extended family, and then from a place of love with my friends. And then finally, maybe a little bit of some space that I held for myself and a place of love for me. I was able to finally give myself permission to do these things or feel these things or acknowledge whatever it was
Right.
that I was holding back. And that is so freeing and so beautiful. And I am far from perfect, and I doubt myself every day.
But that's real freedom.
But it felt good.
Right. Exactly.
It felt good,
Exactly.
right, to say I'm an author. I'm an author.
Right.
I'm actually on a byline. My daughter's the author,
That's exactly right.
but because I designed the
Sure.
cover of the book.
Right. So,
Yeah, but it was just so letting yourself go on these journeys, giving yourself permission to do these things, really is some, as you know, because your journey has been,
it's just allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
yeah,
And putting
which is
yourself
hard.
out there. It's very hard. That's
It's
the most
so hard.
difficult thing that we do as human beings, but it is the most powerful, rewarding thing that we do if we can just muster the courage to let it happen.
It's so hard to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
It's so hard to read a review that somebody says,
Oh my goodness, yes.
like, I kind of liked your book, but there were like some weird things in it. You're right. And I want to be like, dear reader, a 5-year-old told this story. Lay off,
Step back.
Right. But that comes with the territory, and
It does.
I'm grateful that person bought my book in Texas and decided that they were drawn to it and gravitated toward it. So, whatever the situation is, but being vulnerable and putting yourself out there, that's difficult.
Well, and you all did that when
Yeah.
it comes to the book. Della may not have realized it at the time, but that's what she was doing. She was pouring out something from her heart to her mom in a safe environment, and her 5-year-old heart just opened up and spilled that all out.
Yeah.
Right? She came up with that. She thought of that because she had love in her heart. No other reason. Kids have no idea. They don't know anything but love. That's right. That's all they know. And you were able to capture that moment, and believe me, one day she is going to sit and read those books to her children, to your grandchildren, and it's going to be an amazing experience. And I read them to my granddaughters, right? And when I told Chloe about them, and because Chloe had met Della, right?
Yes,
so,
yes.
I mean, it was really cool. And Chloe's she's my artsy one, right? Everybody else plays sports, and she plays sports too. I mean, it's funny because she's this sweet little blonde girl with these, and then all of a sudden she puts on this hockey gear and starts hurting people, and it's hard to, balance the two. But she loves to paint, she loves to write and do all those things, and I encourage that. She's a photographer and does all these things, and that, again, going down another path yet, that I'm sure we can discuss ad nauseum, but at the end of the day, we've gotten away from the arts in our schools, and we really don't focus on those things as much as we should, And I know you had told me last night that Della had a little accident at musical practice, right? So, and I love to support the arts and the musicals in local communities, local school districts, but I think it seems to me that we've kind of strayed a little bit away from that, putting emphasis on that with the kids,
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And like you said, we could really discuss it ad nauseum, truly. But going back to, kids doing this from a place of love.
Right.
We just really, really, really want to let those children know, and even those adults know, like, everything's okay. You can do this. It's okay. It's going to be okay. But also, I think that the really important part of this, and circling back to the whole global local conversation, is that Della told a story about a little town in Pennsylvania on a river that's hard to pronounce for a lot of children unless you live right here. Monongahela isn't that easy of a word. And so actually, whenever we don't have a lot of time left, so I'm gonna wrap it up with this. We were just given that they're gonna start our music.
Alex, yeah, he has a hook, so be careful. He doesn't fool around.
Okay, so just I guess a final thought, right? So I did send this out to a couple publishers, and everybody's response was exactly the same. We're not going to publish this book. Kids don't know how to pronounce Monongahela. They don't know about Brownsville, Pennsylvania. The map that you have in the beginning of the Mon Valley doesn't make sense to a lot of people. It doesn't matter to a lot of people. This has to be much more general. And I said, thank you very much for that, but it matters to her.
Sure.
And she wrote this story, and it matters to our neighbors and our friends and our family.
That's awesome.
So we're going to keep this as true to this 5-year-old story as possible, and we're going to make this work.
That's amazing.
And we did, and we made it work all the way to Europe.
Exactly. And that is such a wonderful story. And hopefully, as you said, Della's experience in doing this and her writing this and these books being successful will inspire other kids to, when they go to school, to want this more, right? And I think that's how we'll come full circle, and the arts will have more emphasis, and we'll get back to that place. So, well, listen, before Nick pulls the plug on us.
We're out of time.
We are out of time. And I knew we would have a conversation. We could keep talking. But listen, thank you so much for joining me. This has been wonderful. Please keep doing what you're doing, and let me know when the Fish Tour Friday starts again. It's we're creeping up on Lent here pretty quick, and I need to know where to go to get the good fish sandwiches. So, but again, thank you so much. Give my best to Mitch and the kids, and take care of yourself and enjoy.
I will. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks.